The international community says that the 2 degrees centigrade increase from some point around 1890 is the most that we can have a survivable planet. The planet's going to do fine, but human life on the planet will be deeply affected. But the consensus is we want to keep it to 1.5 degrees. So the model shows where we're going to be if we don't make changes, and when we start making policy changes, how do we bend the arc to bring the temperature down to between 1.5 and 2 degrees centigrade. We've taken it now to 250 governors, senators, congressmen. This model allows a decision maker to play with different options and in 1 hour understand how the levers work and how they can actually solve the climate problem. When we open up coal, we can actually specify a dozen parameters. If you want to stop coal, when do you stop building coal plants? What's the rate at which you close existing plants? Is there subsidies or taxes? Within almost any reasonable range, you can change any of the parameters and the long-term message is still the same. So you have hundreds and hundreds of solutions and an infinite number of possibilities about how to fight and ultimately solve climate.
So let's say you're the czar of the world on energy. Take us through the policy steps that you would impose and show us how they work on your model.
Virtually every economist will tell you that the carbon tax is the single most effective weapon in the fight for climate change. The carbon tax is the notion that if you tax all of the carbon that's in gasoline or oil or other uses, you'll raise the price and therefore substitutes will come into the market that have lower polluting effect of carbon. Why don't you open it up and run it to $100 a ton? That is the number that's the largest number that any policy group has ever advocated that a carbon tax should be, even though we know it's not enough. If you look at $100 a ton, you see now the 3.6 came down to 2.9 centigrade. So that's a huge step because the higher price of all things that burn fossil fuels made them less economic, and a $100 carbon tax single-handedly brought that down. I might close down coal plants because they're the worst polluters. I like electric cars. Electric cars is a really big thing, but right now, electric cars aren't as important in China and India because their utilities are still carbon-based. We might have less meat consumption. Believe it or not, that really has an impact. Fewer cows will be less methane. Capping methane at the wellheads. 40 years ago, we solved the problem with sulfur dioxide called acid rain using the equivalent of a pricing model. What was so amazing about it is it solved the problem faster and cheaper than anybody could have imagined because it harnessed market forces. That's what's so powerful about a carbon tax. The model begins to suggest that if you could ever get a carbon tax close to $250 a ton, you would get most of the way there. It's just nobody's ever considered a carbon tax of that scale.